Hello. Hi everybody. Welcome back. It's Mr. McGibbon. We are going to be talking today about people, power and change and community organizing. So welcome to the show. So we're going to talk a lot about strategy. There are three parts to this sort of idea of community organizing. There's using your heads, there's using your heart, and there's using your hands. And today we're going to talk about using your head, and that's looking at strategy. A little bit later, we're going to look at the heart, and that's the why of organizing. Why is it that this is important to you? Why are you doing it? And why is that important? What motivation do you have? And the last part, which will come after that, is using your hands, which is about how do you bring a shared understanding of things, how do you work with people to be able to move these resources that you have through a sequence to achieve your ultimate goal. Now, strategy is very, very simple. There's a few ways to describe it, but we're going to describe it for this. And I've got some notes down here, that's why I looked down here. That strategizing is turning what you have, the resources that you have, into what you need, the power, to get what you want, to get the change that you want to see. So this is why it's important to understand power and the nature of power. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But a little bit more on strategy. So humans very naturally are strategic creatures. For example, to get here today, I had an idea that I would like to come here, and then lots of obstacles got in my way or presented themselves that I had to negotiate. And because I have an imagination, I can imagine different outcomes. When average sorts of things drop in, for example, my computer didn't work so well this morning. It was crashing all the time. It was overloading. So I had to find a solution for that. That allowed me to have the resources that I needed to get here. Izumi had to go out, so I had to negotiate with her to make sure that she arrived home at a certain time so I could arrive here at the time that I needed. So there's always an obstacle that comes into place. This is true pretty much of any movie as well that you see that mimics human life, is you'll see the hero's journey. You might have seen that in English class, where there will be an ordinary person, status quo, and then something remarkable will happen to them, be presented to them, and that will take them on a journey. So this is the idea of it being motivated. Something has to happen. Something has to for you to actually have to develop a strategy. So strategizing is motivated. Strategizing is intentional. It is something that you decide to do, that you think about, that you make it change. People who aren't particularly strategic end up spending a lot of unnecessary energy going in the wrong directions. They're less likely to recognize constraints and opportunities to be able to move towards goals. So we have to bring intention to our actions, which requires burning more calories thinking, to the point where we can meet challenges fluidly and quickly and nimbly. Strategy is the last one I want to go through. A strategy is nested. So we're going to look at a case study in a minute. You're going to have a look at it. Montgomery bus boycott. It's a case study from America. And strategy is nested. So you're going to look at a situation where there are lots of obstacles for this in this case study to overcome. But at each step of the way, decisions are made which are seemingly based in reaching the same goal. Now, an example of not doing that is actually when students do, sometimes you'll give an assignment and you'll say, here's the rubric, have a read of the rubric, it's very important, I want to see these things demonstrated. And students will get together and they'll get all excited, won't even look at the rubric, and they'll develop something that is really great and within their group, and they go off in this direction, and then you grade it and they go, what's going on? I put my heart and soul into this assignment. Woe is me. And the teacher is saying, well, I gave it to you, I said this is what I wanted to see, and you did this thing, and there's a disconnect. That's an example where the actions that the students are taking, albeit fun for them, are not nested in what is actually needed. And so it feels like wasted resources. It certainly might contribute to their learning, but doesn't contribute to demonstrating what is wanted to be demonstrated in the classroom. So strategy is nested. So they're important things to understand while you read through this case study. The other thing I want to talk about is power. And understanding power is actually really important. And power, as I'm describing it to you, is based on a simple idea, that power is the ability to achieve purpose. And this idea came from Martin Luther King. So the idea is illustrated as quite simple when you look at people with different resources. Someone who has a lot of money. Okay, let's think of money as a resource. It's not the only resource there is. Someone with money, it does create a lot of opportunities where they can maybe achieve some things that they can do with money. So they might want to take up art. So they have the resources to become have art lessons, to buy the materials to do art, all of those things, which makes them quite powerful. And that resource is very handy when you're trying to do that. Someone who doesn't have that, doesn't have access to that sort of money to buy those resources, can be ingenious in other ways, but they may not be able to afford the materials. So even the idea of doing art, it seems like something that's completely unachievable. So power in this case is the ability to achieve purpose. The second thing, I don't want you to think of power as something that is static, that is just stuck in time. There are certainly power structures that have been in place a long time that need to be challenged. But I also want you to consider that power is relational, that there is a relationship. And so part of understanding what is important and what is needed for our leadership is understanding that people have needs. And if you need something from someone that has some power, understanding them is the first step to be able to find something that you have that they need, which may make things easier. Let me give you an example. So consider that let's say for the sake of this, that there's a badminton group on campus, wants to go to Yokohama to do a badminton tournament. And let's say, for sake of argument, that I am in charge of the money. And I get to say yes or no whether people go on trips. Now, that's not the case. It's a student-run program, but for the cases of this is me. Now, the students have to do, if they want access to the funds, this might seem like a huge power differential, but at a school, it's fairly typical, right? What I need is to be able to say yes really quickly. What I need is the paperwork to be done well. But let's say the students come along, they do all the paperwork, and the cost is just too high, okay? And I say, I'm sorry, you can't, the cost is too high. Students go and fly into a rage. Oh my gosh, I'm being oppressed. The school is terrible. Mr. McGibbon is a villain. And there's that whole, which is not incredibly useful in this situation. So the no is met with this frustration, which is probably fairly natural, but not particularly useful. Then the relationship becomes a little bit different because the badminton team still want to go on the trip. So what else does Mr. McGibbon need? Now, if you were to engage in a civil conversation, you would actually be able to get to the point where maybe I need it to fall below a certain amount of money so you can meet that, so the budget is okay. There's also other things in activities where you need to do write-ups for parents, to document so we can get more funding. The funding does come from founders, so it's great when students write to founders saying, I had a meaningful experience. And also, I'm a teacher, so I love to see that you are learning from your experience. All of these things are needs that I have, and they are well within the reach of students for helping to supply. And the goodwill that comes from that and develop that helps create a system where I don't have power over them, that we have power together They get what they need and I get what I need. Not all circumstances are going to be that, but we're quite an open sort of situation here. There's no heroes or villains. So here's a situation where everyone can get their want to some degree. So this is what I mean by, and then the students have power, they learn something, and then I have a better camaraderie and understanding of what students' needs are and how to manage the program. So we all learn. So power is relational. You have to understand the interests of each other and the resources that they have in order to create more equality. That won't change the situation structurally that I control the money, but that's just one case study. So to track down power, to see who has power, the ability to achieve purpose, you have to ask 4 questions. So one is, what do my people want? So the badminton team is saying, what do we want? Who has the resources to enable us to get what we want? Okay, in this case, Mr. McGibbon. What do they want? Well, you don't know. You have to engage in a conversation for that to happen, or observe and see and read the air. And what resources do the students have that Mr. McGibbon would need? And when you can track down those things, you see that the balance sort of works out. So in the situation that you're going to see with the Montgomery bus boycott, I want you to consider these things. Who has the power? What resources do they need from us? And so on and so forth. And that helps you track down and see how the relationship is very, very important between these things. Mistaking emotion for strategy is foolish. Motivation, it can be a motivation, the frustration of not getting what you want, but it's not a strategy. You have to actually stop and say, okay, what am I going to do in this situation? Okay, so that's what I was going to talk about for power. Let's leave it at that. These are new concepts. It's going to take some time. Let's see if the case study, the Montgomery bus boycott, works for you. I want you to take notes on it. Then I'm going to leave some notes below about how I want you to interact with your buddies to make sense of this. So when we come back together for the next video, that you will have a clearer vision together. And I'm going to have to trust in you guys to do that, to get the most out of this. So thanks. That's all we got for now. And I'll see you in the next second part of this video. Thank you. Bye.